I've got some questions about contrast. I'm very aware and clear about how much I have received from the contrast I have lived, and the gifts are tremendous and amazing. And I see that a lot of what I learned from the contrast and what I value now, safety, love, commitment, working with people at a deep level, whatever, all of those things came from the contrast that I lived. And I wondered, when I came into this life, did I attract those challenges, those early challenges, that family, as a result of what I knew the gifts that I would gain? Or did I attract that situation because that's where I last left my vibration in my previous life?
Certainly not that.
Okay.
Because you come into this physical experience from your source energy vibration. You didn't take your vibration from your last life into non-physical and hold it there in a holding bank over your head. Mm-hmm. You re-emerged into the pure positive energy, acclimated or became again that pure frequency that is you, and from that vantage point came forth. So everything that you are attracting from this environment is as a result of the intentions that you held. I want to give you something very clearly here. From your non-physical perspective, prior to coming into this physical experience, you knew that there would be variety. But we want to talk about contrast just a little bit here, because we can feel a little bit in your vibration that we would like to clarify. Most people, when they are talking about contrast, mean it in the way you do. I had struggle, I had trials and tribulations, and I'm not ungrateful for them because it led me to greater wanting that subsequently gave me a better life. Sometimes a person will sit as you are sitting here, and they will describe some hardship that they have overcome. And even an audience as enlightened as these that come to our Abraham gatherings often will jump to their feet in applause at the overcoming of the hardship, where we would rather that you do not encourage hardship. Mm-hmm. In other words, it is a nice thing when a strong contrast gives you a strong desire. But the thing about that strong contrast giving you a strong desire is that the likelihood of acclimating to that strong desire is not very great. In other words, when you have strong negative influences that make you really want something that's very far apart from where you are, most people never make the jump. They're giving birth to desires, and the desires are being answered, but their pain is so great that they don't let it in. And sometimes after we talk to a person such as you, who has done such a remarkable job of utilizing the contrast and making the jump and feeling such elation, in part because there's just a big difference between the way they were feeling and the way they are now feeling, and so they're exuberant in their new discovery, much of the audience is thinking, I should look for more struggles so that I can have that kind of growth. And we want to say to you that expansion certainly comes from contrast. But we're saying contrast, not conflict. We're not talking about agony and defeat. We're talking about choices. We're talking about a buffet that has a lot of choices, and you say, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. But most people have not consciously remembered that this is a universe based on attraction or inclusion. So they have developed patterns. They learned it from those who came before them. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And in every one of those, no, 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 I do not want that, they were actually saying, yes, yes, come to me, this thing I do not want. So they were creating an environment of things wanted and things not wanted, and the contrast just got greater and greater and greater. Remember that law of attraction is like a magnifying glass that lays over everything. So the things you feel good about are amplified, and the things that you don't feel good about are amplified. And that's why contrast gets greater and greater and greater. So now let's come back around to where you began. Did I, you said, have plans for strong contrast from my broader non-physical perspective? And we would say, you knew contrast would be great, and you did intend to really understand it, because you're a teacher who intended to teach it. And you know you can't teach what you don't know. So in that sense, we would say yes. But we do not believe that any non-physical energy ever intends severe hardship for the purpose of the knowledge that will be gained from it, because every non-physical energy knows that knowledge comes from all contrast, great or small. Does your source energy sometimes choose lifetimes of hardship in order to have strong wanting be born? Yes, it happens all the time. From your broader non-physical perspective, is it seen as hardship? No. It's like the teacher that we were talking to earlier. Your inner being could be standing in that body of a substitute teacher, seeing this renegade lying across the desk, and your inner being could be having joyous, remarkable, exhilarating interaction with this one. In other words, what a really fun thing to get to deal with someone as serious and as strong as that. While from your physical perspective, you might see it as a challenge that was really uncomfortable for the day, while your inner being never saw it that way. Esther will watch someone. She saw on television the other day that a sightless man climbed the highest mountain. She just couldn't imagine why he would even want to do that. She knows he didn't do it for the view, which is the only reason she would want to do it. And she can get that from an airplane. And so it was hard for her to even understand why he would do that. And yet he has many powerful reasons that he was wanting to do that. And he received much satisfaction. In other words, you just can't know for someone else.
So was it just the next slot that's why I got that family, or did I have agreements with those other souls?
There was absolute vibrational harmony. And remember, now this is the most important thing for you to remember. There is only a stream of well-being. There is only a stream of source energy. You never walk into a room and look for a dark switch. There is not one. There is not a switch that floods darkness. There is a switch that resists the light, but there is only a source of well-being. So from your broader non-physical perspective, you weren't sent forth because karmically you were damaged goods. You weren't not a flawed energy that just didn't know any better. And so in your chain of evolution, this is just the karmic wheel that you've got to get on. It wasn't any of that. It was that there were powerful desires that you held that were being answered through that environment. Oh, in other words, everything that is coming to you is coming in response to what you're asking for. The difference between the asking that is taking place here in this physical body and the asking that is taking place from that source energy position from which you came into this physical body is that you're always asking from that place of pure positive energy when you are coming into this body. Does that make sense to you? Well, we want so much for that to clear it up. In other words, as you stand here in this body, you're asking. Everything that you're getting, you're asking for. And someone would say, I would not ask for cancer. And we say, if you've got cancer, you ask for it. And someone would say, no, I never, ever, ever would ask for cancer. I was asking for well-being. And we say, well, did you believe well-being? Well, no. I was worried about cancer, but I wasn't asking for it. And we say, whatever is in your vibration is your asking. In other words, you are vibrationally asking, and law of attraction is always answering that asking, you see. So the differentiation that we're wanting to offer here is that you can get stuff in this physical lifetime that you might not want, or that you might say, I didn't ask for, I created it by default. I was vibrationally asking for it even though I wasn't wisely choosing it. I just didn't know any better. That never happens from non-physical. From the non-physical perspective, you know everything, and you are in a place of pure positive energy, and so your timing and your placement of birth, no matter how you felt about it after the fact, and no matter what anybody else thinks about it or says about it, it was the perfect response to powerful, pure source energy asking. So that brings us back around to your very first question. Would I have asked for this? Did I ask for the struggle? And we say, you weren't asking for struggle. You were asking for opportunity. You were asking for balance. You were asking for contrast. You were asking for life-giving, rocket-launching situations. You were asking for clarity. You were asking for a platform. You were asking for a beginning that would make you ask questions so that early on in your life you would have big answers. You were wanting a running start into this physical experience. You see, here's the alternative. You could be born into the perfect environment where mommy and daddy know everything about pure positive energy and are in such a place of well-being that they've feathered your nest so perfectly that when you get there, it's not possible to have anything but a positive thought, because only positive thoughts abound. Only sweet words are offered. Every time you are looked at, you are adored. Every time you are touched, you are loved. In other words, you came right out of heaven into heaven. Pure positive energy place. And then you went to school. And your world as you knew it was turned upside down. Your teacher doesn't care about you like your mother does, and the other children have their own issues. And you've learned nothing about connecting to source energy. You don't know anything about allowing, because somebody else was making it all happen for you. In other words, we know that there is some area in between these two worlds that we've defined here. But are you starting to get the sense of, let's say you do go to school, and let's say your parents do live in a town where they are able to control the school environment, and let's say your teachers are all handpicked, and bad kids are booted out early on. Nobody ever lays on the desk in your child's classroom, and the community that you live in is monitored and patrolled and safe. And let's say your parents don't let you on the internet, and your television shows are monitored, and your world is cloistered, and you do manage to grow up in this rosy, sunshiny place. At some point, you're going to step out into the world unprepared to manage your own vibration, still wanting the government or somebody else to make those people behave in a way that you need them to behave before you can feel good, you see. And so, as a teacher, you said, let me at it. Let me at it. Give me a strong dose of the contrasting reality from which I will make my decisions and find my place. Imagine a little child that was so loved that it was never allowed to put its feet on the ground. Carried everywhere. And pretty soon the child's too big to carry, and now it's going to have a hard time finding its balance and learning to walk. And you would say that is a true detriment to that child, you see. And so can you see how a strong, determined teacher spirit might come forth and say, hey, I'm going to learn to live in this world early on, make my own decisions, reconnect to source energy, and then I'll have the whole world as my playground. The whole world will be my playground. There will be no place I cannot go and be well. Where there are many of you who can hardly go anywhere and be well. It's only here was well. Everything else is a little scary. And the further from here you get, the scarier it is.
Several months ago, my 16-year-old daughter, who is 16 and going through maybe, well, what's normal in this culture for adolescence, that prickly, sort of ornery, don't touch me kind of stage.
Sort of like what we just described. Been in a cloistered environment, even though no one means for it to be, and now is recognizing that there is a sort of stepping out into the world and a feeling of being totally unprepared. We're not just talking specifically about your daughter. It is a sort of, what it is collectively energy is moving faster in that body of beings than society is allowing them to experience. They should have left the nest 2 years ago.
Wow. Well, what's happening with her, which is interesting and confusing, and I want to know how to support her. She's shared that she is struggling with bulimia, which is an eating disorder.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what's that about?
It's about having two desires that don't blend. It's about the natural desire to participate with food and the unnatural desire to look like the models on the front of the magazines.
Okay. I've read some things about it that also say it's not so much a body image thing as a distraction from being with your own feelings or being with your own self.
That makes no sense at all.
Okay.
Because everything is motivated from point of desire. It is the desire for body image that must surely be, in other words, that is at the heart of that desire.
Okay.
We have never seen anyone who was trying to bring themselves dramatically from where they are to a different place without that being present, you see.